I ask that you welcome our very, very special guest. His name is David Bedein. David, please take it away.
Thank you very much for hosting this session. This is very important. I've been working on the issue of UNRWA since 1987 and had many revelations that bothered people. The United Nations Relief and Works Agency is not an innocuous agency. It is not I'm a social worker by profession. It is a social work agency which has lost its way. Now, until very recently, our material on UNRWA wasn't noticed. People were wondering. There was a major interview with a very important security analyst, which came out about an hour ago. Why was Israeli intelligence not knowing? Why were they surprised? So what we've tried to do, in anticipation that this would one day be a big story, I have an agency, the Israel Resource News Agency, working with the Center for Near East Policy Research, and we hire Arab journalists to go into UNRWA schools and to go into UNRWA camps, UNRWA facilities, and we're accompanied also by Israeli specialists who know Arabic. And the book that I wrote, which is available through my website, israelbehindthenews.com. The book I wrote is called UNRWA, Roadblock to Peace. Now, every year we put this out and had a lot of difficulty getting this into the media. Following what happened on October 7th, it was very interesting to see how our movies went from the area of 9,000 or 10,000 hits to 9.2 million hits, because this is exactly what you'll see here in our movies, is how the children are trained in summer camps to simulate attacks on Jews. I mean, not only attacks, but murder attacks. And rather than me speaking about it, let's see one of our movies made a few years ago, was about the children going to war. And then we'll see another movie on focus on the Askar UNRWA refugee camp. So let's take a look at one movie, then I will give you some commentary and some context. But I've been working on this since I was inspired on this subject in high school in 1967 when I was in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, at a Hebrew Academy, and our teacher said, you know, the issue of the Arab refugees is going to be a central issue one day, now that it's under our control, after Israel took Judea, Samaria, Gaza, and Jerusalem, and that is what has happened. So let's take a look at one of the movies we made, and then I'll break to give you some historical context. Thank you. Let's play that movie, please. Children's Army of Hamas.
There's no sound, and it's too quick, so I'm not sure what's going on. So if you want to stop it and reload it, and also,
well, the sound would be in English anyway. It's all Arabs.
No, it's with translation, not to worry.
Oh, but the
translation is Hebrew. It's Hebrew translation. We need the English one.
This is both English and Hebrew.
There's not any English.
Of violence. Instead of changing its ideology, we discovered that Hamas is preparing for its next acts of terror. We found that Hamas was recruiting and exploiting 17,000 young teens. Drafted from UNRWA by Hamas, the teens attend war games where they learn how to use lethal weapons. Training children for combat represents a clear human rights violation, as spelled out in the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child. Let's watch and listen as Hamas leaders articulate their vision. Let's also hear from the youngsters themselves.
فإن الجنود الأشداء قادمون بإذن الله عز وجل، سوف يرونه في حيفا وتل أبيب وكل مكان من أرضنا الفلسطينية.
إحنا بنعد نتدرب في هذه المخيمات كي نصبح مجاهدون ونقاوم الاحتلال الإسرائيلي الظالم الذي احتل هذه الأرض والذي دنس هذه المقدسات. وبإذن الحي القيوم سنحررها بإذن الله عز وجل، وسنصبح بإذن الله من القادات المحررين للمسجد الأقصى. وهذه المخيمات تعلمنا منها الجهاد والصبر والتمكين والإيمان وكل صفات المسلمين.
كل عام سيكون في هناك شيء جديد يعني يكسبه هذا المشروع، لنصل إلى مرحلة أن يكون جميع أبنائنا وجميع شبابنا شباب يعني قد محونا الأمية على السلاح إن شاء الله.
تعلمنا كيف هذه المخيمات زي تفكيك السلاح الأجزاء المعينة فيه، وخشينا كمان المخيمات إحنا حتى ننهي العدوان الصهيوني من هذا البلد ونصل الأرض المحتلة القدس ونحررها بإذن الله.
المقاومة تعتبرها حماس أساً لإرجاع الأرض وتحرير العرض وتحرير الأبناء وإقامة الدولة وعاصمتها القدس. الميثاق هو مبادئ، والمبادئ لا تتغير ولا تتبدل على مدار الزمان. قررت بأن الكفاح المسلح على رأس الوسائل التي تسترد بها الأرض، وهذا شيء معلوم من الدين بالضرورة.
عشان أتدرب وحلم أنا أكون مجاهد عشان هنحرر الأرض، وطبعا يعني عشان الأقصى إن شاء الله هنحررها بإيدينا وبإيدين مجاهدين القسام والمقاومة الفلسطينية.
شاركت عشان أكون مجاهد وعشان أكون رجال.
شاركت في المخيم عشان نبقى عندنا وجهية كيف نحارب العدو الصهيوني، كيف نرجع أرض الأجداد أرض فلسطين، ما نرضاش على الأرض فلسطين أن نضلها مع اليهود.
وذلك لابد من تحصين هؤلاء النفوس وتقوية المعنويات بحيث يكونوا أقوياء في الدين، أقوياء في انتمائهم للوطن، أقوياء في انتمائهم أو بانتمائهم يعني للجهاد، ويكونوا عونا للمجاهدين لا عونا للمحتلين.
أصبح مجاهد مقاتل في سبيل الله ولنحرر فلسطين من دنس الاحتلال الصهاينة ولنكون نواة مشروع التحرير القادم بإذن الله. بحكي لنتنياهو يعلون بقول لهم إن شاء الله سنحرر فلسطين من هذا الطريق. إذا ضلينا على هذا الطريق حنحرر فلسطين إن شاء الله.
دربنا هذا الجيل على كل أنواع الأسلحة وعلى جميع التخصصات، دربناهم على المدفعية وعلى الدفاع الجوي، دربناهم على الأنفاق، دربناهم على الكيماندوز، على الضفادع، دربناهم على كل شيء حتى يعتدلوا ليحاربوا عدوهم بإذن الله تعالى.
لم يبقى إلا حل وحيد، هو أن نقاوم هذا المحتل حتى يندحر مع الأرض الفلسطينية. أي اتفاقية تسوية لا تعدو أن تكون هدنة مؤقتة، ولذلك ما يجري على الأرض دائما كلما انتهت جولة كان الاستعداد للجولة الأخرى حتى يزول هذا الاحتلال.
برنامج حماس ثابت في المنهاج التربوي والإعداد، وكذلك في برنامج المقاومة. نقدم رؤيتنا لهذا الصراع مع الاحتلال، نقدم مبادئنا ونقدم آليات التحرير من خلال المقاومة. طبيعة العلاقة بين حماس والأونروا هي علاقة طيبة وجيدة. نحن نحرص على تسهيل وتيسير أعمال الأونروا، ويحدث تواصل في بعض الأمور التي قد يحتاجون لتسهيل الأمور، ولكن الآن كما قلت أن الاتصال المباشر هو مع الحكومة.
نؤكد على أن الكفاح المسلح هو الخيار الوحيد لتحرير فلسطين لا المفاوضات.
نحن نقول أن هذه التهدئة وهي تمثل بالنسبة للمقاوم استراحة مقاتل حتى يتم تحرير أرضنا ومقدساتنا. المقاومة من حقها أن تطور إمكاناتها، ويعني هذه ثقافة المقاومة يعني متجذرة في الشعب الفلسطيني.
At the end of the children's war games, Hamas held a rally to celebrate. Let's hear their call to arms.
هذا هو الجيل الذي يتأهل للتحرير وللنصر وللعودة وللاستقلال. يا ويلكم يا ويلكم يا بني صهيون من هذا الجيل الذي لا يعرف الضعف طريقا إلى قلبه، جيل الحجارة وجيل الصاروخ وجيل الأنفاق وجيل العمليات الاستشهادية.
كما وأتقدم بخالص الشكر والامتنان لجميع من أشرف على تدريبنا في الميدان، حيث تعلمنا الكثير وفي عدة تخصصات منها الرماية والقنص والدروع وغيرها من التخصصات.
فاليوم وضعنا في أيديكم السلاح ولن ننزعه من أيديكم إلا لندرب به إخوانا من بعدكم
إلى هناك، إلى القدس، حيث التحرير بإذن الله. القدس وحق العودة والأرض والمقدسات، كل التقدير لكتائب القسام التي جعلت من مهامها تدريب هذا النسل العظيم. لم لا؟ أليس هؤلاء هم جيل التحرير وجيل الانتصار؟ كل تحية لكم يا أبنائنا. هذا الجيل الذي استهدف بالتدريب والعناية والرعاية في عمليات كشفية جهادية حركية على تدريب السلاح البسيط الخفيف، لنعدهم للمستقبل لكل النوائب التي يواجهنا بها عدونا الغاشم.
As the European Union deliberates the terror status of Hamas, a question remains. Will the EU and UNRWA donor nations consider Hamas human rights violations against children?
Well, that was pretty heavy.
Okay, I'm ready to resume discussion. You can see me okay?
Yes.
Okay, very good. Anyway, this is one of 20 films, 20 movies that our agency made over the last 15 years. We were generally ignored, not only by the media, but by Israel in general. And the word went out from the Israeli government not to allow us to make these presentations for Jewish organizations abroad. Now there's some interest. They kept saying, oh, it's not good, it doesn't promote the truth, except for one thing. My only other option was to hire some children to promote peace while they were wearing uniforms saying they were from UNRWA. What you just saw were the UNRWA workers at their best, in a sense. Now, UNRWA does not hide the fact that its 30,000 workers act as soldiers at war with the Jews. This is time to take into account the origins of UNRWA, initiated by the 1948 UN mediator, Folke Bernadotte, who first conceptualized the inalienable right to return to Palestine as a contra to the Jewish aspiration of the return to Zion. The time has come to take off the gloves and define UNRWA as a hostile organization and to investigate their criminal responsibility of the Commissioner General of UNRWA, whose name is Philip Lazzarini, who bears direct responsibility for the daily discovery of immense quantities of weaponry inside UNRWA schools. I must mention that our agency, which is also known as a news agency, placed questions to all the donor nations of UNRWA to say, what about checking to see if there's weaponry in the schools? That which was found, of course, by the Israeli army in the last 3 months, and I got a total refusal, as a matter of fact, denial. Now, all it takes is for one member of the U.S. Congress to request that the GAO, the General Accounting Office, Government Accounting Office, gather evidence to present to the UN Secretary General with charges of war crimes committed by UNRWA. That will get the ball rolling towards an investigation of UNRWA at The Hague. That's our next step. And that's what we're going to be raising funds for, to put together a top team and top videos to show in several languages at The Hague. It would be appropriate to ask at least one congressperson to reactivate the dormant RWG. The RWG is the Refugee Working Group, as the UNRWA donors group that was founded in 1991 and has been dormant ever since. It's supposed to oversee the UNRWA $1.6 billion budget with the vast majority of funds which come in cash. A revitalized RWG would investigate the transparency of $1.6 billion of annual donations, which 68 countries and 30 organizations give to UNRWA, mostly in cash, and that UNRWA, to make sure that UNRWA will no longer use these funds for terrorist organizations that work inside UNRWA that you've just seen. That's one of, and you can see on our website, IsraelBehindTheNews.com, on top of it says investigative films. You'll see those movies which have been denied public access. You find me one Jewish organization, and perhaps tonight is the first, to allow us to make this presentation. We've been censored, we've been crushed, not allowed to make this presentation anywhere. Now, after blood has been spilled, maybe we'll have a different attitude. The fact that the time has come to make sure that UNRWA employees associated with Hamas, Islamic Jihad, or Fatah, in accordance with the laws of the donor nations, will be forbidden any further activity inside UNRWA. UNRWA bears responsibility for more than 5 million descendants of Arab refugees from the 1948 war. The time has come to replicate the principles of UNHCR, United Nations High Commission for Refugees, to promote permanent resettlement of fourth and fifth generation of UNRWA refugees, and to make sure that UNRWA starts resettling these refugees in decent conditions. Because the indecent conditions, the lack of dignity in which they've been placed, and besides their ideology, has only reinforced this issue. Now, what we're going to show is, I want to show one of the, before we see the next movie, actually after we see the next movie, we're going to show you the graffiti in the schools. Now, what's that? Why are we worried about the graffiti? Why are we worried about the school curriculum? Why are we worried about about demonstrations which take place, like you just saw, in where children are flailing arms? Because there is such a thing as laws and rules that the UN is supposed to behave according to. The UNRWA, the United Nations theme for education is peace. Peace starts here. Have you seen that peace starts here in what you've just seen in that movie? No. And our job is to fight back. Now, the government of Israel has thought over the years that maybe it would work with UNRWA, improve their economy, improve the amount of UNRWA workers working in the Israeli government, Israeli society. And there's more than 200 Israeli corporations invested in UNRWA. So there's what's called an inbuilt conflict of interest, which we have to deal with. People making money from UNRWA, at the same time, the UNRWA population at war with Israel. So it's the ultimate situation of a conflict of interest, which is what we're facing. So I want to show you a second movie now, which is a movie we made this summer in the Askar UNRWA refugee camp. Why did we make it in the Askar UNRWA refugee camp? That's near Nablus, Shem. Well, I had a special reason, because our neighbor, Rabbi Leo D., his wife and 2 daughters were murdered by UNRWA residents of that camp. And you'll see the atmosphere in that camp, which again, when we put the question, before we made the movie, we put the question to the Israel Foreign Ministry and various of the donor nations, what do you say about the guns that are prevalent in the camps? And then we got no response except denial. So take a look at this movie, and then we're going to open it up for discussion. But first, let's take a look at the second movie.
David, while
Yes.
it's being queued up, can I just ask you to speak a little bit slower?
No problem.
A little bit more and a little more loud.
No problem. I did not know that I was.
I've had a number of people saying they can't hear you. You're speaking too
Okay,
fast.
so let me. This is a new camera today.
Yeah.
Let me be very clear. The Askar UNRWA camp is located near Shem, near Nablus. We sent a crew inside there, as we have done with our other 20 movies. I apologize if I spoke too quickly or if my voice wasn't clear enough. Am I clear? I'm more clear now?
I was hearing you, but yes, you are more clear.
No problem, because I don't want that to distract. And I also want to influence everyone who's listening this to do something, because I'm going to give you a scoop, though, that none of you expected. United States had sponsored something called the US-UNRWA Accord. The US-UNRWA Accord, you can see it on my website, IsraelBehindTheNews.com. It's the third item. The United States signed a deal with UNRWA in July 2021 that it would not transfer funds to UNRWA so long as they maintain their curriculum and maintain their incitement, including we show on our site. We took 915 pictures of the graffiti near the schools. All the graffiti, the feature of the graffiti was murder. And so again, this is a treaty signed between the U.S. and UNRWA in July 2021, and because UNRWA would not keep to making a change in the curriculum for the last 2 years, 2.5 years, money allocated to UNRWA was not transferred to UNRWA. Well, what happened 3 days ago was that the United States was officially announced by people in the Knesset. The Knesset Foreign Relations Committee was informed that the U.S. would now be abrogating that agreement. In other words, allowing funds to flow, even though the UNRWA had not complied with what the basic requests for reform of the school system. So I want you to see this next movie, and then we'll open up the questions. Again, this is just, as far as I'm concerned, this is the beginning of a relationship with our agency and everyone who is watching this movie, this YouTube. And I thank Judy for welcoming us to make this presentation. Again, it's like breaking through the color barrier, because it's been a tough go to try to get anyone to see this, and the self-censorship of the Jewish world is what it is. So let's take a look here now about Askar, UNRWA, Cradle of Killers. It speaks for itself. Thank you.
The Askar refugee camp, located on the outskirts of Nablus, is one of 19 Palestinian refugee camps in Judea and Samaria, controlled and maintained by UNRWA, the United Nations Relief and Works Agency, which benefits from a whopping budget of $1.6 billion, flowing from 67 donor countries and 33 international NGOs. 58% of that budget funds the UNRWA school system, which emphasizes and promotes the right of return as the underlying principle for its operations, its very reason for being.
احنا تهجرنا من يافا، واليوم جايين نحكي عن حقنا بالعودة ونكافح لحد ما نرجع لأراضينا في يافا وأراضينا بحيفا والليل بالرملة، إنه راح نرجع قريبا جدا. لو شو ما يصير مش راح يصير سلام. السلام بدناش إياه.
شو بيعلموكم عن حق العودة بالمدارس؟
عاد شو احنا مشروع شهادة كلنا. واحنا ولازم ندافع عن وطننا كثير. راح ناخذ حقنا، والله ينتقم منهم ان شاء الله يموتوا كلهم. القدس عاصمة فلسطين وراح تضلها لنا ومش راح تتغير، راح تضلها لنا. المستوطنين اللي فيها كلهم راح ينتخبوا. يا توتة الدار صبرك على الزمان انجام، لا نعبد ما نعود مهما طول المشوار، يابا 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 يابا. وحابة أقول لكم إنه مفتاح العودة لساته معنا، وراح نفتح يوم من الأيام في بيوتنا. مثل إني بتعلم بجهدي وحق إني آخذ وطني ونحرر فلسطين، يعني الناس الشهداء يعني بيقدروا يحرروا فلسطين إذا بنضلهم هيك.
أنا نور المسيمة، مديرة نادي أشبال العاصفة. إحنا كل سنة اللجنة الوطنية بتعمل نوادي صيفية في مخيم عسكر. قسمنا الأطفال ل4 مجموعات حتى بأسماء شهدائنا في مخيم عسكر، أساسهم يضلوا حاضرين في ذهنهم وأفكارهم، ويتعلموا منهم البطولة ويضلهم مستمرين في درب المقاومة. في عندهم يعني كل طفل مستعد يكون مشروع شهيد مقابل إنه يحافظ على المبادئ اللي إحنا مترسخة عندنا، حقنا في العودة، وإن شاء الله انتفاضة أقوى جاية، وهدول أطفالنا هم اللي راح يكونوا.
The delusion of refugees going back to homes they left in the wake of the 1948 war, homes which are long gone, has turned into the source, the motivation, and the promoter of the armed rebellion against the Jews. Askar is the smallest of the refugee camps in Judea and Samaria, yet stands out as the camp with the highest amount of Palestinians engaged in terror activity in relation to the number of its inhabitants, including the highest number of shaheeds, armed terrorists killed in the act of murder, and the largest number of convicts serving life imprisonment for murder.
مخيم مقاتل، مخيم مقاوم، مخيم يقدم الشهيد تلو الشهيد، ومن جميع الأطياف ومن جميع الأعمار ومن جميع التوجهات.
From this refugee camp embarked the Palestinian assassin of brothers Hillel and Yagel Yaniv from Har Bracha, who were killed driving through Hawara in February 2023. It was also home to a 15-year-old terrorist who set out this past April from Askar, armed with a gun, shooting and severely injuring 2 Jews in Jerusalem. Askar is also home to the 3-man terrorist squad who, on April 7th, 2023, murdered Lucy D. and her 2 daughters, 15-year-old Reina and 20-year-old Maya, in a drive-by shooting. The perpetrators of these heinous killings are hailed today as heroes in the Askar refugee camp. As soon as the murder of this Jewish woman and her 2 young daughters became known, sweets were handed out on the streets of Askar as an expression of happiness and triumph. The funeral of Hassan Katanani, the terrorist who pulled the gun on the D family, grew into a huge rally of support, which consisted of everyone from the Askar refugee camp as they celebrated the murder of Jews and the destruction of Israel.
حسن قطران سوى عملية لأنه أول شيء دافع عن وطنه وعن كرامته، رجع شوية من الكرامة لما هجرونا من ديورنا وبيوتنا وسيطروا على أراضينا.
مين هدول؟ مين هدول؟
إبراهيم النابلسي ومدينة حوا وعبد الله الحسني أحمد السعدي.
مين هدول؟ مين هدول؟ ايه؟
كل مخيم مختار. في صالح صبرا، في معاذ المصري، في حسن القطناني، وفي كتير شوية. ونعطي لأخوتنا المقاومين نديهم سلام والله يحمي كل واحد مقاوم. تحية لكتيبة عسكر وكتيبة جنين وكتيبة بلاطة، هذا عمنا الله يرحمه استشهد 2022 28/10/2022.
وين استشهد؟ كيف استشهد؟
عملية على حاسيس حوارة.
Posters with pictures of the killers were plastered in every corner of Askar, while songs of praise for the murderers were composed in their honor. Askar's UNRWA summer camps were even named for these murderers.
صورة البطل إبراهيم النابلسي لأنه كان مش مطارد، كان يطارد. إني بحب إبراهيم لأنه يعني كان قدوة لكل شباب نابلس، كان قدوة لكل أطفال نابلس. صورة الشهيد البطل عبد الله الحسن أرعب كيان وغطس ومدمر وأسير وجريح وشهيد. أنا حبيته عشان كان مقاوم ودافع عن وطنه.
The family of Hassan Katanani was congratulated with pride and approval that their son had the honor to kill a Jewish woman and her 2 young daughters while driving in their car to meet family members during the Passover holiday. They expressed their hope and wish that the terrorist young children would go in the footsteps of their father and merit to become holy shaheed, just like their blessed father. The terrorist mother expressed herself in her own way.
احنا لازم نقتلهم في بلادنا، في عيالنا، في أظافرنا، ناكلهم بسناننا ناكلهم اليهود. هم أعدائنا بالأول والآخر اليهود.
الله يكرمني وأربيهم، الأولاد يطلعوا زي ما بده ربنا إن شاء الله. يكونوا من حفظة القرآن من الصالحين البارين إن شاء الله. مجاهدين في سبيل الله كمان. كنا بالنهاية على هالدرب يعني الجهاد واجب علينا. الحمد لله على كل حال.
Memorial ceremonies for holy martyrs and festivals celebrate the release of terrorists from prison, at weddings and family celebrations accompanied by shooting rifles and pistols. Hundreds of Askar youth take part in these ceremonies, including children and young adolescents, absorbing the message of blind hatred so that they too can become the killers and shaheeds of the future. The amount of weapons in the Askar refugee camp are huge. Askar now boasts at least 200 wanted terrorists just waiting to commit the next acts of murder. This is how the right of return, the reason for being of UNRWA, has become a source of lethal violence that surpasses the organization's hollow slogans for peace. The time has come for donor nations to think again about blind support for UNRWA.
Okay, you can hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, this is David Bedein again. That was our 24th movie that we produced on Scene. This movie has reached 9.2 million viewers. More people want to see what's going on. and the roots of the issue. You know, many of the things that we predicted over the years based on our research are now coming home to roost. In 2007, we documented how the UNRWA Union was taken over by Hamas. And as a matter of fact, that actually caused the Canadian government to pull its funds out for at least 5 years. We also showed that we have acquired all 1,000 school books used by the Palestinian Authority and UNRWA. And we produced a lot of studies of that. It basically balanced Shimon Peres's promise in 2000 that the school books would be for peace. Where we go from here is to move beyond October 7th. We're going to seek support to produce a movie called On the Road to October 7 to show how everything was planned, everything was simulated in the summer camps. You can see again the movie is on our site, israelbehindthenews.com, and we're going to show that. We also going to seek support to make presentations in each of the parliaments and in the Knesset, where they're considering future support for UNRWA. Again, UNRWA, if you look at the UNRWA website, you want to give them money because it looks so good, so nice, but as if they are an innocuous summer camp. So we were going to the US Congress, Canadian Parliament, Swedish Parliament, British Parliament, and the German Bundestag, and we need support to it. We wanted to get this through private support, not through government support. We don't know where the government of Israel will be going with this, but over the years, Israel has preferred to bow down to the economic interests of Israel, as if we're the nation of prophets with a PH, as opposed to prophets with an FITS. So again, that's our message. Our message is this has to come out. The misinformation and disinformation which come out on a daily basis will be beyond belief. And thanks, I won't use the word thanks, but because of what happened on October 7, where the children streamed out of the UNRWA schools and started attacking with what they've learned, what we've shown over the last 15 years, what they've learned, the art, not only of the art of hatred, but the art of murder. Again, getting that across is not easy, but we have to do it. We have to let people know. The expression that I like to use now and then is "let my people know." So perhaps there's some questions that people have. Again, thank you, Judy, for welcoming us to make this presentation.
It's such a pleasure to have you. Can I just ask you one quick question beforehand? I saw that you gave testimony to the Knesset.
That's correct.
Was it last week?
That's correct.
Have you gotten any kind of response from them?
Yes, the Knesset members are gathering a special session tomorrow. The same committee that had looked at UNRWA tomorrow is going to be looking at the incitement, and one of our colleagues has shown how the Israeli Arab sector, 20% of Israel is Arab, that the Israeli Arabs are being now brainwashed with Palestinian Liberation Organization, PA, school teachers who are teaching them this kind of message. Israeli citizens are being taught this message, and it's very serious. We have, I've requested, I've had several meetings with the office of Guterres, the UN Secretary General. We've had 5 meetings with him. We haven't gotten a response of late from him. He's been, certain organizations that doubt the justice of the state of Israel have met with him, and I think turned his heart in a different way. But we shall see what happens now. In the next few days, we're sending out new material to the donor countries, new questions. And the question, by the way, which everyone in this who's watching this movie can ask of the U.S. government and every government that supports UNRWA, are you going to ask UNRWA to weed out the weapons from all your schools, since many of the schools were already shown to have weapons, where the IDF has not gone into, in Bethlehem, in Jerusalem, right? We know that there's weapons there. There's no reason why not to take them out now, and the donor countries would cooperate with Israel with Israel in doing that. But it takes people to make that gesture. Take a look at on my site, israelbehindthenews.com. Look at the revolutionary US-UNRWA accord, which is a good accord, a good policy motion, which came actually during the Biden administration, which was abrogated just a few days ago. Ask why it's being abrogated. Ask questions. individuals putting on questions is very, very important. I had a professor in social work named Eliezer Jaffe who used to say, a problem is a problem when someone makes it into a problem. Please make this into a problem.
I'm going to go to some of the viewers' questions. And Helene, anytime you want to jump in, please do.
I think it would be important just to answer one very quick question, because people are asking, how many Arab students are there educated through this UNRWA, through the UNRWA educational system? So that, I think, you know, where does Israel stop and UNRWA take over? I think that's a real important question.
I do not have, I want to be very honest, I don't want to make up figures. I do not have the figures in front of me. I will be happy to, it'll take me 1 hour to get the figures from my research, not a problem. Understand, every Arab child in all of the UNRWA camps in Judea, Samaria, Gaza, and Jerusalem all learn from this curriculum. It's a curriculum of advocating murder. Incidentally, some people have called the UNRWA people Nazis. Well, the Nazis always tried to cover their tracks so people wouldn't find out. We never have a problem getting this out to the public. And something I'm going to show you in a minute is a school book, a new school book, which was reinserted in the UNRWA schools, which actually praises someone who murdered an Arab woman who murdered 36 Jews. Again, I've had 4 professors who come into the office. One of them was Robert Wistrich, may he rest in peace, who they were all specialists in Nazi culture, Nazi education, and they said there was never anything like this in the Nazi schools. So they're a step beyond that. And getting anyone from UNRWA or the UN to understand that is a uphill battle. I don't want to be sensational, but you can't call them Nazis because they're worse.
So Pesach Rogaway had asked a question, but as a preface to his question, is this kind of education being fed to the students in the other Arab countries, or is it just the UNRWA responsibility?
Well, my colleagues who work with me on the UNRWA school books and the PA school books have discovered that that's not happening in many of the Arab countries, not in Tunisia, not these days, not in the United Arab Emirates, but we see that there's been some changes in Saudi Arabia. However, the Saudi education is not changing its war with Israel. In other words, all this is a product of the war with Israel that the Arab states declared in 48 and has continued ever since. And when we came to Israel, I came to Israel in 1970, and we saw this kind of education going on, and there was supposed to be an amelioration of all this. However, and that was the promise of the Oslo process. And between 1993 and 2000, there was a special commission set up to redo the textbooks. However, the renewed textbooks were never used, and that's the big news item. And there's at least 20 organizations that paint the Palestinian Authority in rose colors and try to express that they are for peace based on what was promised from the commission that was established. Except they didn't pay. And my own story, when Shimon Peres on January 1st, 2000 declared they had a peace curriculum, I said, Mr. Peres, I just spoke with the Palestinian Minister of Education, and he said that they're not going to use those school books, the school books for peace. Peres moved away from the microphone and said, I know, and walked back to the microphone. So it's part of the legacy of what's called the Peres Center for Peace, that they have a peace curriculum, and most people in Israel think that they have a peace curriculum, and unfortunately, because the 4 television stations and the 12 or so daily newspapers do not cover this. This is not known in Israel. One of the things we'd like to have a sponsor for is to make presentations for the public in Israel who do not know this is going on. And there was only one Israel TV correspondent named Yaakov Achimir who retired, who used to sometimes take clips from our movies, but ever since he retired, this is not. And by the way, the movies you just seen, the movie you just saw, Askar, produced in August 2023, not one TV station in Israel has shown it, because of the pressures of what's called the peace movement and the people who are invested in the Palestinian Authority. Okay.
Okay. Our next question is from Andrea Spindell. Her organization, CAEF, is co-sponsoring this, and I thought you might want to speak, Andrea, and do you?
I'm just going to put my video on.
Okay.
Thank you very much. And thank you, David. We have shared your videos with our subscribers as well, and I appreciate this opportunity, Judy. My question is that in Canada, we're seeing the funding increasing to UNRWA. David and I have spoken about it. And I'm wondering if you have suggestions at this stage, given what we've seen on October 7th, of what we can do now to actually get some response from our government to actually bring this to an end. As you are aware, the government's giving over 100 million to UNRWA, and they want to increase it.
100 million?
Well, over several years, yeah.
Wow.
They made a 5-year commitment, and I think they increased it on the basis that they need humanitarian aid given what's happening in Gaza. However, it's not taken into consideration October 7th.
My suggestion is very clear. Have a showing of these movies at the Canadian Parliament and bring families whose loved ones have been murdered by Hamas and by UNRWA teachers. We have a whole string of people whose loved ones have been murdered by UNRWA. Put them in front of the Canadian media, force them to see it, show it at the Canadian Association of Journalists, show this at the Canadian Parliament. And I'm going to show you one more thing here. I think you have the actual book.
I have the book.
Okay, well, this book here is very important because
Yes.
this was inserted into the curriculum after the head of the UN asked them to take it out, a whole curriculum on Gadal al-Mughrabi, who murdered 36 Jews in the coastal attack in 1978. Now, what's important here is on the back of this book, as opposed to what you have, it says 2023.
Yeah, I have that. Yeah.
Okay, so you have the reissued book. So they're trying to get away with chutzpah, and they're thinking no one is going to make this into an issue. Make it into an issue, and we'll bring families whose loved ones have been murdered by UNRWA, and that's what's very important. UNRWA has been responsible for premeditated murder, and if they want to sue me, I wish they would. I would love to go to court with them saying I've just libeled their good name. What good name? But the point is, people don't know this, and when you look at the UNRWA website, you would think it's everything is fine in their schools. But again, reading, writing, and Retzach is not appropriate. Again, you got to embarrass them, and you have to embarrass in a way that most people won't do. Embarrass them, and that's one of my Canadian stories. There was a Canadian terrorist who took refuge in Toronto. Someone who had attacked an El Al plane and took asylum in Toronto. What we did was, and he had killed someone on an El Al plane. We took the family of the family that of the man he had murdered, put them in front of the media in Canada, and destroyed his reputation. Again, you got to do with the human element combined with the facts. And anyone who involved in funding UNRWA education, we say they are involved in premeditated murder. You cannot use any words like that. We have a common rabbi, Andrea. I was a student of Rabbi Mordechai Kaplan, founder of the Reconstruction movement. And in 1969, when I was a student at the University of Wisconsin, I went to see him with a group of students. We want to help the Palestinian cause and maybe the PLO. And he looked at us and says, "Are you kidding? The PLO, an entity which has a covenant which calls for the mass murder of Jews? How can you think that way?" And later on in 1996, our agency had the honor, if you want to call it that, to be the only agency at the session of the Palestine National Council where they would not cancel the covenant. However, not to mention Peres's name again, but why not? Shimon Peres put the word out that they had canceled the covenant. And by the way, even at the what's it called, the signing ceremony in Washington, they would not sign anything that they would cancel the covenant or even ratify the accord. Again, put it in front of people, do it directly, and don't be polite.
I just want to add, since I saw a couple of people on the chat, if anyone else is in Canada and would like to collaborate with us, please do get directly in touch with me. I'd appreciate that. And thank you, David. I think we will follow up. I did meet one MP who has broke rank broken rank with the Liberal government and spoken out against Canada's decision at the UN. So maybe we have a way in through him to talk to others. Thank you.
The problem is a problem.
much,
When someone
Andrew.
makes it into a problem, you have to, excuse me, but kick ass. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So many questions have come in that I'm going to kind of try to,
What I'll ask you to do, Judy, is please send, we don't have quite time for all the, send all the questions to yours truly. I'll be happy to entertain all of them, and I'm not a lone wolf.
well, what I'm going to try to do right now is to kind of put them together, because you give very full answers.
I want to
So-
emphasize one thing. We have 4 people who with background in Israel intelligence who work with us, who responded in a proper fashion. Go ahead.
Okay, so let me just give you the gist of it. What is the first step, and how do you see some subsequent steps to try to defund UNRWA?
You cannot defund UNRWA, period. What you can do is look at, because UNRWA, first of all, I've appeared 4 times at the UN Correspondents Association, met with the top people in the UN. We've also met with Guterres and with actually also previous heads of the UN. UNRWA is ensconced in the UN. You can't get rid of it. What you can do is you can suggest new steps that can be taken. For example, to demand that there be a change as a condition for funding, which the United States agreed to not fund UNRWA education, which is 58% of the budget, and the other issues can go. The demand that UNRWA be involved in rehabilitation and resettlement of refugees as opposed to the right of return. The other thing you can do, and we need some good lawyers. Any UNRWA official who has advocated murder of Jews should be indicted. And have a criminal background, criminal tag on him, which can follow him around the rest of his life.
Those are fine ideas. We just need the leadership to put it into practice.
There's not going to be leadership. There's going to be fellowship. In other words, there's something conference of Greater American Jewish Organizations. How about followers? Forget about the leadership. Leadership is always bought off. That was but what you can do, I want to be positive. If we make pains in the asses of ourselves on this issue with enough people, if 100 people from around the world were to contact the office of President Biden, remembering that this is a election year, 100 people would say, we want you to reinforce the US-UNRWA Accord and not abrogate it. If 100 people from around the world were to write that to President Biden through the embassies, through direct contact with the White House, they would have an effect. I'm not talking about a petition, 100 individual letters, and that would affect it. I know that from people I know in the Biden administration who are sensitive. But again,
phone calls mean more than anything, other than personal visits. But the emails that come in and the text messages and whatever else you do is not as effective as a personal phone call with your thoughts on the matter.
A personal phone call followed. You're absolutely correct. I've been working this issue for many years with people who know what they're doing. A personal call to a staff person of Congress or staff person of the White House, followed up by a letter. It makes all the difference.
Okay, so that's how we get to them. We are now with 3 minutes left. I know, David, that you have enough information in your vast stores to keep us here for a couple more hours. But since we have 3 more minutes, I just really want to thank you. I want to assure you and everybody else in the audience that you will get a link to the videos, and you will get a link to David's organization if you are so moved to make a contribution to his organization. It's a highly active, and you can see how important the young Arab children who are being taught this way can't possibly be, this can't be unlearned. You know, it's like this young generation is ruined. But we have to work and think about the next generation that's
Let me
coming.
be a little encouraging, please. We check with American law and what the Americans and the Brits and the Russians learned from denazification. The first thing they did was to get rid of the teachers. And there's no reason why there can't be a demand to fire all teachers who have been teaching this curriculum. And
Well,
that's
especially since they're mostly UNRWA.
of denazification. I will be writing this to each of you, and thank you all for participating in this program today. And thank you, Judy, for welcoming us to express a view that has been crushed. But there's no reason why we can't look ahead.
Okay, so first they come for the teachers.
Yes.
I have a little bit of a special program for people who want to stay on after this official meeting is over. My brother Ken, who many of you have met and some of you have seen on our AFSI Talks programs, is in Israel now. He's been volunteering and seeing people, meeting people. Ken talks to everybody, and he'll be staying on to answer questions that anybody has regarding, you know, what is the view from the ground in Israel. So we say, David, you're welcome to stay, but you know the view from the ground. Have a great evening, and may your family that's in Gaza return home to you soon and well. And you know, I'm just, you know that our thoughts and our prayers are with you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. So I am now going to end the meeting as far as the recording.